Shaun, tell me a bit about your journey in terms of your background, your career.
Okay, so I went to an Irish Catholic school, very strict school, done the whole sixth form thing, and then left and joined a vehicle removal company for the Met Police. My main background realistically is building and engineering. Done that for many, many years, until I had an industrial injury, which I couldn't manually do it at that time. So I found a new path, and it just happened to be youth work. So the engineering side was very different to the youth work side because it's very man-based. So yeah, it's gonna stereotype men there, like a lot of swearing and shouting and a lot of angry testosterone, like men running around everywhere. So, but then when I come into youth work, majority of the team was female. So I really had to adapt quickly on how I was. Do you know what I mean? Like around work colleagues, sort of thing, which was tough in places. Little swear words would slip out now and again, but I had to like really rein them in and retrain my brain really in a work placement. Yeah.
That's really interesting, especially the adaptation from one extreme to the other.
Adapting, coming over from a man environment, working to like a mixed. It was a struggle, and I did wonder how I'd cope. Whether I'd be a big fear of mine, really, because I started as a volunteer in youth work, was would I be sacked for maybe saying the wrong thing to someone, or I always had that fear in the back of my head. So I had to change, and adapt fast and learn and watch how my new colleagues were around each other.
That must be really challenging, because going from a male-dominated environment to maybe a profession where it's more female-dominated could be quite challenging, especially because the two different environments operate completely differently. But like obviously you did eventually fit in. And how long have you been in youth work?
Professionally 10 years. 10, 11 years. So I suppose youth work unprofessionally a long time, coming from a big Irish family and having a lot of like nephews and having to deal with their problems, and I was that uncle who they'd come to, and even other family members' children. So professionally 10, 11 years I'll say, but youth work a long time.
Tell me more about that, because you talk about coming from a big family, and then you talk about the official and unofficial youth work. So tell me more about like maybe where you think youth work has connections to maybe your own upbringing. Do you feel that it has connections? I mean, I'm hearing you, and you're kind of more or less saying it, but how do you feel about that? How do you see it?
Okay, so my childhood was it was a bit all over the place. I had a brother, bless him, who had a brain tumour at 13. So I was about 9, and he was in St Thomas's Hospital for a long, long time. So with that, my mum stayed with him a lot. So I sort of didn't have my mum around. I had my nan, but I was a mummy's boy. So that was very hard. And when we look in youth work with single parents, as such, I didn't come from a single parent family, but for a large period of my life, especially going into teenage, my dad was at work, my mum was at the hospital with my brother, and I had my nan, my older brother, and my sister, sort of, and my aunties and uncles pretty much looking after me, which they made sure pretty much I was fed, went to school, clean. But there was a lot of hustle and bustle going on. So the focus wasn't really on me as a child. They just made sure it was the basics, fed, clean, education. Yeah, so my dad was always at work, so I can really see, I can get the single parent thing, so I did stray a little bit, do you know what I mean, and was a bit rebellious, showing off in a weird way. My dad did teach me the basics, how to shave and all that sort of thing. And then as I got older, then my nephew, he didn't have a great relationship with his dad, my brother, my older brother. So I felt myself becoming, that's when I sort of grew, because he asked me how to teach him how to shave. So then I thought, wow, I really need to grow up. I was probably about 17, so I had to grow up early. Taught him how to shave, deal with his issues, problems, do you know what I mean? And just be there for him. And then once my other nephews see that I was there for him, they wanted some of that. I had to be there for them as well, for other different reasons.
It's almost like you transitioned from teenager to somebody who was responsible for others.
Yeah, very much so. So how I would explain it, that I was 9 and I became 16, 17. In between was a blur, as such. Because it was so muddled. My brother was in hospital for a long, long time, like years. And then even when he came out of hospital, he still needed that care. Do you know what I mean? And then I had the fear that I was going to lose my brother. Do you know what I mean? So I had this fear of, my dad was at work, and my dad loved us. Do you know what I mean? When he was around, he did cuddlers and stuff like that. I suppose I was a really deep thinker from an early age.
And mummy's boys.
And a mummy's boy, so even my mum would fall asleep because she'd be tired, and I'd be worried that, in a strange way, that she'd passed away. Because I had this fear of death because of my brother, and I'd go to make a cup of tea, and I'd say, who wants tea? I hated making tea because we were such a big family, so it was like 12, 15 cups of tea, do you know what I mean, they had to make. But I'd wake my mum up and say, how many sugars do you have? And my brother, my other brothers and sisters and all that sort of thing would go, you know how many sugars, leave her alone, she's tired. But I wanted to wake her up to make sure she was alright. So I went a bit off the mark thing there, but so from 9 to 16, 17 was that blurry stage.
And it's interesting because we've talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs before. And many of us go into youth work because we see the gaps and we want to help others. But isn't it so important for us to be able to see that in ourselves? So
at the beginning with youth work, it weren't about myself. It was literally, it was a young girl that we knew, she was having problems with her family, and we was asked to get involved, like me and my wife. So literally she was talking to her home, her family home, and there was a group of girls waiting for her, and they beat her up. So then I had a call from her friend to go and pick her up. That's me and my wife. We picked her up and took her out the family home. Reported it to the police, took her to her doctors the following day and stuff, and then we had to actually get her area moved because she kept on trying to commit suicide. So we'd have calls at 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning that she's tried to hang herself. And I just thought, wow, I need to go into youth work. I had a light bulb moment. I need to study youth work. There's too many young people slipping through the net. And I have wanted at the time to save every young person that was slipping through the net. Because I was going through this. And I suppose there was little bits of flashback. Do you know what I mean? That's subconscious from what I had gone through. Sneaking out a little bit. So, yeah, so I took myself to college for 2 years and studied youth work.